It's the divisional round tournament tactics breakdown where we're taking a look at the full. It's a 4-game DraftKings main slate that they Saturday and Sunday combo. We're going to break it all down for you guys. With me as always to break it down, we got the double goats, the two-headed goat, Burns, the writer, author, and director of the book Secrets of the DraftKings Millie Maker. That's right, director, because eventually to be made into a movie, hopefully.
I need to make it into a fucking movie, man.
That's a great idea.
There it is.
I need to be like that, that woman that did The Secret. Be like,
yeah, that's right. Mathematician, engineer, and all of that, Burns. And of course, 2-time Millie Maker winner, BobbyWow, aka Bobby Moneybags, aka the nicest guy around. That's right. That's right. I refer to you as people outside of the DFS world do.
Wow, there we go. I appreciate that. I'm just excited about this movie idea. We got to make that happen.
It would be fun. Only for the three of us to watch, though. No one else would ever want to see such a film. And we're taking a look at this this big 4-game slate. I love the playoffs. We are dialing it in. And what right off the bat, macro level, like the 2 games on Saturday look like mirror images of one another. Just like one's on the East Coast, one's on the West Coast. It's the same game happening twice. And then, of course, the more exciting games for me are happening on Sunday in terms of the competitiveness of those 2 games. So we're going to see how it goes this weekend. But I think I'm going to switch it up here in terms of how we break it down. We're going to do a little bit more of the showdown style where we kind of dive into each team, right? So let's look at these matchups, and let's start with Baltimore-Houston, gentlemen. We didn't see anything from Baltimore last week, so there's not much to look at in terms of snap counts or anything, but everybody's healthy for Baltimore outside of Mark Andrews, so we should get their standard sort of approach. BobbyWow, you were talking about Dalvin Cook before. I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we decided it feels like it just makes the running backs even less exciting because it's not like Dalvin Cook's going to come in and be a featured back, but limited carries that he does take, whether it's, a couple carries, maybe a target or 2, that does nothing to help the other guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to deal with that at all. Like, unless we get a blurb, all I would say is what you just said, which is probably not interested in any of them because of Dalvin. But yeah, it is interesting that he's coming in. Taking a look at just the distribution of how this team generally looks. Zay Flowers, the closest thing to an alpha wide receiver getting 22% of the targets this season. He looks good. I think this is an up-paced game. It should be a great game for Zay Flowers. And then Odell Beckham, there's some thought that they kind of saved Odell Beckham for the playoffs, like kind of kept him sparing and get like playoff Odell. I don't know. I do have a little weird feeling that Odell's going to do some crazy shit.
If anyone was going to do some crazy stuff randomly, it'd be Odell.
Yeah, it was just like out of nowhere, like in the playoffs one last time. And then, of course, Isaiah Likely now getting the full role at the tight end position for Baltimore. We flip it over to Houston, and Houston's really interesting. I think the usages, you've got 71% snap count at this point for Devin Singletary. He's effectively getting all the snaps at running back with Dare Agumbawalde mixing in a little bit, mixing a little Damian Pierce, but very little. Wide receiver is going to be really interesting for Houston. It looks like, and this is a big thing I was trying to figure out for this week. I think it's one of the big questions because anytime there's like 3K salary guys, you got to be aware. I think it's going to be John Mechie operating as the WR2. He got 76% of the snaps last week. He's got a Q tag slapped on him. But it looked like he was the WR2 with Woods and Xavier Hutchinson kind of mixing it in. I don't know if that's because Woods was coming off injury last week and maybe they'll elevate him and he'll get more snaps, but he's been an unexciting option for most of the year anyway. So that's kind of how it seems like it's going to go down with Dalton Schultz and Brevin Jordan operating as the 2-tier tight end. Last week, man, Brevin Jordan. We talked about it on the show. Did you guys watch the segment where I was talking about right here on this show, playing those $2,500 tight ends and how that opens things up in your life. I was not expecting one to go off on a monster score like Brevin Jordan did. But actually, a bunch of them, even Harrison Bryant put up some score last week. Like,
yeah,
playing the $2,500 tight end really worked out nicely. I'm not seeing that dynamic in place again this week. So, I mean, the main takeaway, I think, for me looking at these two teams is just like Mechie looks like the WR3, and also Nico Collins getting a strong 33% alpha share with no Marlon Cheeto Humphrey to worry about on Baltimore. He is hurt. He will not play.
Nico could get it done, I think, against this defense. This is a tough defense, but receivers have beaten it in terms of fantasy points. So I don't think don't sleep on Nico here. I think he's an interesting spot. And I agree with your Mechie take. I think, we'll see Robert Woods snap count come up a little bit, but Mechie's the guy that'll be more involved.
Yeah, 3K guy. With Nico Collins, it's just that, like, I don't expect a lot from the passing offense from Houston in general, but that doesn't mean Nico Collins can't individually come out and put up a big score. So, I'm certainly not staying away from him. He might be the best wide receiver. There's like 4 of them. At this point, you got to play these guys. San Francisco. So, again, San Francisco didn't play last week. No snap counts to look at, but we already know what San Francisco does. They focus on 4 guys and everybody else's periphery. Christian McCaffrey, when the matchup favors him, usually is the guy that you can rely on. And then one of the rest of them between Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle probably puts up a score that matters. That's it. That's all you need to know.
Yep.
Flip side here, Packers. I don't know what the hell's going on with these guys because, let's see, Christian Watson. This is one I really want to look at. Christian Watson, 41% snap count. You know what? That's not bad. Last week. Dobbs and Wicks and Reed, they're all in the 50 to 60% category. This is one of the most difficult. Honestly, I don't know how to deal with it. Because you were forced. If you look at the way the salaries came down, you're effectively forced to be aware of and play some of these guys. Yeah, I'll show you. Like, if you take a look at it on screen, I'm going to show you what I mean. It's just all these Green Bay guys like Dobbs, Reed, Wicks, Watson. It takes up effectively the whole $4,200 to $5,800 category. And there's just a little bit of a reprieve in there with Odell Beckham, which isn't much of a reprieve at all. And Gabriel Davis, who is out, doesn't count. So, like, there's no one else. Look, just observe. Dobbs all the way down to Christian Watson. So that's almost $1,500 in salary where you're forced to play one of these guys. Last week it was Romeo Doubs getting it done. I don't think he does it again because that would just be crazy. I think it's one of the other guys. Maybe Reed. Maybe we jump back onto Reed. Maybe Watson finally gets it done. BobbyWow, Watson.
Watson's interesting. I don't see why Doubs can't get it done. I mean, yeah, he's inconsistent. He hasn't done it much this season, but he looked good. And for whatever reason, it drives me absolutely insane. But LaFleur he knows how to dial things up for this offense. The Dallas passing defense is a very good passing defense, but it didn't matter. And I think, we could see another situation where we see a decent game out of Jordan Love. And again, I do think Doubs is really intriguing to me. Reed is going to have a bounce back game. Watson's the guy that he just doesn't seem healthy yet. But yeah, any one of these guys, like you said, just the ownership is what stands out about Doubs. 5%. I mean, that's wild to me for a guy who's going to
keep happening. Yeah, if that's going to keep happening, like, all right, I would just say this: if everybody was chasing last week, yeah, that is too low. If everybody was chasing last week, I would feel differently. But my goodness, if it's going to be 5%. Now that being said, I'm not exactly purposefully trying to target wide receivers against San Francisco either. I don't think that's a game I'm like trying to load up on. But you just find yourself when you're building lineups falling in that price range. And I'm going to give a little second thought on it. So I think understanding price ranges is really important for a 4 game or a 3 or a 2. When you include running backs and tight ends, that area gets a little better. especially with running back, tight ends. And I do think that means that double tight end is in effect for this weekend slate.
Yeah,
it's just like, I mean, who'd you rather play? I'll give it to you right here. George Kittle or Jaden Reed, like, you know, yeah. I kind of like Kittle there. Or if you go down a little bit, like Isaiah Likely, Dalton Kincaid, or, you know, Dontavian Wicks.
I'm going to have a lot of double tight end and a lot of Isaiah Likely. This is a picture perfect matchup for a guy like Isaiah Likely. So yeah, double tight end.
They stand out a little bit. Like, it stands out to me that the tight end is a better play than that wide receiver in that last spot when you're stuck in that price range. So it's just something I observed as I was handcrafting lineups here. Just real brief look at the last two games. So, you know, see what we can get off this matchup sheet. I think it's really important. Got the Bills at KC last week again. I found it really interesting, at least a positive sign that Stephon Diggs back up to like that 30% target share type deal. One really nice thing about this slate is they priced down Stephon Diggs. He's finally priced kind of appropriately for what he's done this year. You know, he never belonged in the CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, you know, 8,500 plus category that he's been floating in. So now he's back down to 7K, I would say, where he belongs. And is playable. I actually think he's playable. K-Shack and Sherfield. So it's funny. Sherfield didn't see any targets last week, but he did. He was on the field. We called it. You can go right back to it.
I really like Diggs. I mean, I liked him last week. He started to come out a little bit. The Bills just didn't need to go to him very much. Like, they were never under pressure. Josh Allen was running all over the place. I think despite the matchup, this could be another really solid day for Diggs. This might be a game where he breaks out. So I'll be a little overweight on him.
I love it. Kincaid has been great as well, and 20% target share. So, but I would just say, like I said, in trying to find those crazy turds that no one's going to be on, just because Trent Sherfield didn't see a target last week, he was on the field.
Any interest in Dawson Knox?
What's
that?
Super
turd? Any interest in Dawson Knox as a super turd?
Yeah, I mean, if I need a 3K guy, like, you know, he scored a touchdown last week. I don't see him getting a ton of targets, but sure, he's as good as anybody at 3K. Burns?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dawson Knox, he got a touchdown last week. I mean, he was targeted quite a bit. You know, K-Shack lucked into one. I thought he was going to get tackled before he scored that touchdown. So, you know, he benefited your lineups because he got the touchdown. Yeah. I don't know if he gets it this week. A little bit tougher of a matchup against Kansas City secondary, but I agree. Stephon Diggs he's the alpha in this offense, and he could actually show it this week. I like Dalton Kincaid. I mean, he's been getting a lot of good run in this offense. But don't forget James Cook, though. I mean, James Cook he's been doing it. He didn't quite. I was really expecting him to blow up last week. Had a significant amount of ownership in him, you know, some 45% in him, and you know, he just pulled a 9. But he can get 30 very easily. He's a great pass catching back out of the backfield. I like him a lot this week again.
There you go. And you know, on that note, just on the usage note, it's important to understand that Latz Murray was not used at all last week. It was all Ty Johnson. So if you're looking for the backup to James Cook, it is Ty Johnson. But the reason I mention it is I think, like, when it was Latz Murray as the backup, I think they were much more likely to bring in Latz at the goal line because that's kind of what he does. Where if it's going to be Ty Johnson, I don't really think Ty Johnson's more of a goal line back than maybe a little bit more, but like maybe they'll give James Cook a freaking goal line carry for once, because really his issue is he doesn't score touchdowns very often. Shifting over to the Chiefs, and this is where the matchup sheet is the most beneficial. Who the hell knows who's on the field for the Chiefs half the time? Well, here we can get an idea of it. So Rashee Rice and Justin Watson effectively are the 1-2 wide receivers, each one getting 70+% of the snaps. Working in for just randomness, I would call them, the extra turds, I guess, is what we'd call them. Mecole Hardman, Richie James, and Martez Valdez-Scantling, all sub 50% snaps. BobbyWow, any preference with this turd crew?
No, I don't think so. No, I think Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce, I think that's where you go, man. You stick there. I think you could ride Mahomes even to the winning lineup with just those two guys. They're too risky. Mix and match and MME, but outside of that, I have no confidence in any one of those turdly guys.
Oh my goodness, no. I think, listen, if I'm MMEing, I can never say no, because when you're MMEing, you have to account for these type of guys that have big upside. The guys who can score a touchdown on one play, it's Justin Watson, and it's probably Martez Valdez-Scantling. So depending on, some people are looking at this, but playing a 2-game slate, BobbyWow, instead of a 4-game. You have to have these guys in your lineups. You have to account for them. That's a big reason why I'm getting this in depth with the matchup sheet. We don't normally do this for tournament tactics because it's a lot of games. But, some of you are going to play the 2-game. I'm playing them. We're all playing the 2-game slates. Who we kidding? Like, I'm setting up for the 4, but I'm playing those 2s.
Yeah, in that case, I think Justin Watson is probably a safer bet to get some targets. I think Mecole Hardman is becoming the MVS 2.0. He's like, I think he's going to see some more deep shots. He had a couple chances last week for some big catches. Mahomes couldn't get him there. But I think Mecole Hardman is like maybe that super GPP guy that has a big ceiling, but also that floor of 0.
Yeah. And I would also, in looking at the tight end Travis Kelce, I would say does look like maybe they're stepping up his role just a smidge in the playoffs. Burns, you're nodding.
Yeah, I think this is a Kelce day. I think Kelsey's going to have to shine in this game for them to actually move on. Their offense has been very vanilla the last few weeks of the season. He needs to start stepping up. He's not stepping up whatsoever. They move with him. Rashee Rice had a great game last weekend. I think he's going to have another solid performance this week, but for them to move on in the playoffs past Buffalo on the road for the first time ever in the playoffs, they got to start looking at Kelce, and they got to look at him probably 10 times, target him 10 times this week. He's got to get it done.
Yeah, I could see it. I don't know if Taylor's going to be in attendance. It's a little chilly in, Buffalo.
I don't know if they have those nice, cushiony, warm press, box
in the
seats
booth,
up there
right?
for.
Yeah, but you guys know how it is. No one wants to hang out in Buffalo for all that long.
Got to shovel snow up there.
Buffalo's a place where your primary thought when you're there is, when am I leaving?
Yeah, it's the armpit of New York State, man.
The Buffalo people are not happy with us right now. Last game of the weekend, and I think maybe the best.
Yeah, but I could say that wholeheartedly because I lived in upstate New York.
Yeah, you see, you're from. Listen, I went to a college in the area as well, so I'm allowed to.
I lived in Rochester for multiple years. I mean, it's a little bit more inland. You don't get as much snow, but man, those two lakes colliding, Ontario and Erie, produce a lot of snow, and they're just shoveling that shit all weekend.
It was interesting last weekend because everybody mentally went into the slate thinking it was going to be this horrific weather. Like, you kind of pushed Buffalo aside. And of course, Josh Allen ends up being the highest scoring QB, being the nuts play. If you guys missed it and you're watching this for DFS Army subscribers and for VIP subscribers, we did a back test stream this week. So we went back and reran all these slates and checked it out and what happened. And we do that. We try to do that as often as possible here because the learning curve in DFS, it's really, really important to constantly be back testing, looking back. What did I think was going to happen? How did it go? And what strategies would have worked? Last week in particular, like, it wasn't even heavy stacks. It was so funny the way it worked out. it was just one-offs from all the different games. You just had to get the right ones. And I do think that is the way as you get to shorter slates. The other thing was 4 players versus defense was a really important play because Houston, I believe it was Houston defense, did all that work. And then all those Dallas players went nuts. And you couldn't get all of them in the lineup if you didn't specifically allow for massive numbers of players versus your defense. So I don't know that that'll be the case here, but just an interesting observation. So I think Detroit Tampa is the best game from a offense.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I like to hear that. So Bobby, well, take a the biggest thing I have going on here with Detroit is just these 2 running backs. It's really hard to decipher what the hell's going on with them.
Yeah.
They're they eat from each other so much.
To me, this is the type of situation where you can lean into that matchup projection a little bit. I love that defensive ranking sheet from Stats. I lean into that. I let that make the decision for me. And Tampa Bay is really good against the run. So I think Jahmyr Gibbs has the better pass catching upside. So if I'm playing a running back from Detroit, I lean toward him. But don't feel like you have to touch either of those guys either.
Yeah, I think Montgomery is especially difficult for him to get there with the role that they have him in. Like he needs to break off a 50-yard run, which, it doesn't happen that often. And he probably needs 2 touchdowns mixed in, which again could happen, and that only gets you to like a 4X. Like right. He does that and 2 touchdowns. He gets to 26, which is great, but it is asking a lot. Andrew's already talking like people want to play Dalvin. Man, we got to see what the Dalvin ownership is going to be. At wide receiver, the big game last week was Josh Reynolds. And when I say big game, guys, 30% target share for Jay Reezy. That's not been the case all season long with him. He has kind of been a bit of a turd. And do you guys think that was because Laporta was kind of limited? It looks like Laporta played the whole game, so I don't know if he was just like, he doesn't seem like he was limited. Like what led to the big game from Reynolds? Was it just like, hey, let's lean on our veteran? Was it Khalif Raymond being out? What happened last week?
To be honest with you, I think the game started, and it was Montgomery. He had a couple of they went to Montgomery quite a bit in the first drive, right? It was all Montgomery. Then they bring in Jahmyr Gibbs. Laporta catches the touchdown. Other than that, he really didn't do much. And then Amon-Ra really just had was kind of like a standard day for him. It was like 21 points. It was basically standard. But yeah, you're right. Josh Reynolds, I mean, he was the go-to. They had to go to him. He was the only guy that was really getting open in that secondary against the Rams, outside of the guys who scored touchdowns and, Amon-Ra just doing Amon-Ra things for a standard day. And Khalif Raymond was out that day. They went to Peoples-Jones a couple of times. And then Jameson Williams, he was out as well. So it was really just...
No, Jameson Williams played last week.
Wait, he did?
Yeah. Jameson Williams was in the game. He just didn't do much. He was disappearing in there, Burns. So you didn't notice him out there.
Yeah, that's probably what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. Last week, so focused on like Brock Wright, and that play just didn't produce because, Laporta came in and he did Laporta things.
And again, in fairness, Brock Wright was in the game. He just didn't get any targets. So it was not, it was okay process. But yeah, Laporta being healthy than any of us suspected, I think was what went on last week.
They're going to rely on Laporta. They're going to rely on Amon-Ra. This could be the big, back and forth affair, right? Both defenses are very susceptible against the pass. This is going to be, probably the game that goes over quite a bit to the over. And so I like it a lot.
Yeah, I agree. This game has a lot of potential. And again, I love a dome game in the heart of winter. It's fucking cold outside. Burns, both of you guys got sweatshirts on, rocking the hoodies in your house. That's how cold it is outside.
I was going to rock the winter hat on this show too, man. It's cold as shit.
Yeah, there we go. So I think this game does have a lot of potential. And yeah, we'll talk about individually about like the quarterback and why I think, it's not a lock button, but it is a good spot. Tampa side, and another thing I wanted to mention just before I move to Tampa is, if you run the optimizer, Josh Reynolds is in every lineup. Like he is so projected above his salary level. The projection is so much stronger than the salary that he will be in every single lineup that you make. You do have to control for that because he's still Josh Reynolds.
And one thing to mention, just one more thing on that is with Goff, if you are playing Goff a quarterback on the main slate, it feels like a stack with two kind of play. But I don't love the idea of stacking both Laporta and Amon-Ra. I think it's too restrictive. The way to use those guys is grab one of Amon-Ra and Laporta and then mix in both Reynolds and Jameson Williams with those guys as well. So 1 and 1, that's the way I'm matching it. I'm gonna be overweight on Goff, and I'll be pairing either Amon-Ra or Laporta with one of those other guys, Jameson or Reynolds. I think that's the way to do it.
I don't think we've seen any game this season where both Amon-Ra and Laporta went off. It was either one or the other.
Bobby, exactly. I think I love what you just said, because that is just a very common way that these things also go down. It's not like the two most expensive guys on the team, although I think Mahomes can go with his two expensive guys, but like, it doesn't have to be. It's usually that random, that touchdown that went to Khalif Raymond or Trey Palmer last week, or K-Shaq last week. Like that one was the one you needed. Or with Dak, it wasn't like, if you stacked Dak last week with the people we all know, all right, but it was Michael Gallup and Pollard that were the best. Of course, Ferguson, you needed that as well, but it was Gallup and Pollard, not necessarily Lamb. So you kind of like, when your quarterback goes off, a lot of times he pulls that like super turd one guy, because you're going to have to make a choice between Khalil Shakir, Josh Reynolds, Jameson Williams. We'll get into the actuals, but Trey Palmer's on that list. There's a group this week that you're basically forced to choose from. And it's nice to tie that in with your quarterback. Looking at the Bucs here, I'm just looking at snap counts. And actually, this is quite surprising, but we saw David Moore come through and win a showdown for some people. And as it turns out, David Moore was on the field more than Trey Palmer. That's a little surprising.
Can I just say that team doesn't make sense? Baker looks revitalized. He looks good. There's random receivers scoring huge touchdowns on big plays. What the heck is going on with the Tampa Bay Bucs?
Honestly, that was much more the opponent last week. They were just dead in the water. The Eagles, I felt like came to lose, and they delivered on what they wanted to do. That's all I can put it. Like, you don't let David Moore do what he did. That play, he just danced through like 12 Eagles. You're only allowed to have 11 guys. I felt like he ran past 12 different Eagles defenders who were all like, what? Why is he got the ball?
The Palmer play too. It felt like they had money on the other side. It was crazy. That was horrible by the Eagles. You're right about that.
I don't even know what Code Res is talking about here. That the Detroit Dome is going to go minus. They're indoors, bro. What? They're not letting in the cold at the Dome just to fuck with the Tampa team. Although that would be a boss move if they did that. What do the kids say? Based. I know what it means, but that'd be based if they did that. I don't know what that word means, but it's definitely based if like Detroit just like let the cold in and just fucked with Tampa.
You can't come in here using buzzwords that you don't know the meaning.
I don't know what it means. What does that word mean?
I'm still trying to figure out what moosh boosh means. So I'm behind the times here.
Bro, you got to get to a fancy restaurant. I'm gonna when I come to Chicago, we're gonna go out to a very fancy restaurant, a French place that has a moosh boosh. A moosh boosh.
You got to hit up Michigan Avenue for Kevin there, Bobby. I'm sorry.
What's that? What's Michigan Avenue?
It's like where all the high-end shopping in Chicago is.
That's what I do. Yeah. I wouldn't go anywhere. I don't want to be where the unwashed masses are. I need to go in fancy town. Listen, I'm not a man of the people at all. I don't see too many people. Stay away. Dude, we're doing a podcast. I can only read so much. You got to put it in a small bullet point. All right. Anyway, so the other thing I want to mention about Tampa is Cade Otton fucking smashed last week. That is not what he always does, but he got a 30% target. Just I felt like target after target going to Cade Otton. So sure, I'll take some Cade Otton.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So I'll take some Cade Otton. All right, let's jump into it.
But just from a high level view, that's your favorite game, Kevin?
Yeah, I think that game has the most potential back and forth. I don't think it's the best side of the entire slate because I want to talk about these quarterbacks. Like there are serious, like I said, there's a problem with Goff. And the problem is Goff has a couple. Let me put it this way. Detroit probably scores 4 times in that game, maybe 5. But give him 5 touchdowns, right? So if I'm distributing those 5 touchdowns, I need Goff to be responsible for 3 of them in order for him to deliver the points that we need. And I just can't be sure of it because you never know if it's going to go to the running back. There's 2 running backs. Each one of them usually gets a taste of a touchdown. And so it's like, all right, how many are left? Well, 2 or 3. What if one of them gets 2? So Goff just has that wide range. But if it wasn't for that, he'd be my favorite quarterback on the slate. But the problem is, I don't know, Montgomery gets one at the goal line. Gibbs gets one. All of a sudden, Goff only has 2, and he's putting up a 21. It's fine, but it's not good enough. Baker looks good, and that's disgusting. I can't even believe it.
He looks good. He's got swag. It's disturbing almost.
Yeah, what is happening, right? But Baker looks good out there. But I mean, I do think so. Just from a who's going to win this game, I think the Lions win this game hands down. I think the Bucs got an easy run last week with a broken Eagles team that has just their defense is so bad. Again, we talked about it on last week. I don't know if you watched the game plan that I did with Statsational for the playoffs, but we went over some metrics about which teams were good and bad, and the Eagles and the Bucs were at the bottom of the list. The Eagles being the worst of all of the playoff teams from a metric standpoint, but Tampa wasn't that much better. So that's why I kind of feel like they're going to run into the end game here.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously they were also without AJ Brown, the Eagles. But how did the Bucs beat the Eagles? At the end of the day, they stopped the run game, and that's what the Bucs do best on defense. I think that's exactly what they tried to do against Detroit. They're going to be forced to throw the football. So again, just kind of proving your point here. I think this game is back and forth, and I think the passing games are both at the top of their game. So I'm really looking forward to stacking both QBs.
Yeah, and by the way, great pass catchers to include in that. You got Evans, and I do think it's Evans and Otton. Godwin, I'm lower on that side of it, but Sun God, great. Again, Jay Reezy, fine by me. I'm good with him. Tight end Laporta, okay, all right.
Mm-hmm.
I like everything to do. And again, indoors, the Sharps are betting the over. There's so many reasons why this game has a lot of chance to pop. So let's jump into, we'll take a look at the optimizer. Actually, let's first take a look at the power rankings sheet just for these games to get a quick sense. This tool is really important. It's available on Sharp app, but this is the John's Statsational Lesia. This is a power ranking sheet, and it gives us an idea of projected totals at the different, and listen, if you're following this, guys, I think this is giving a very clear signal, right? Look at the passing yardage for Detroit in particular. 280. I mean, that this is screaming Jared Goff and pass catchers. Tampa not very far behind at 260. That projection is elite. 49ers, just lots and lots of offense to expect here. And then on the flip side, be careful. This is telling us be careful a little bit about this Kansas City Buffalo game. Maybe not.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is a warning here. Interesting. I think I'm fascinated by the rushing yards for Buffalo and it liking it that much. That could be interesting as well. I think some of that's going to come from Josh Allen. And then of course Baltimore, Houston. Look at the Houston side in particular. This does not stand out as like load up on Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
My heart wants to, but no, everything else says no.
Yeah, it doesn't stand out. Like they're up against Baltimore. Again, that doesn't mean that Chris Collins can't do enough. Chris Collinsworth. comparable for Nico. Nico Collins can still get it done within that 223 yards. All right, so let's jump into it. Let's take a look at the domination station, and we're going to go position by position, sorting by ownerships. And I kind of want to talk this through and get your. So I'll throw this over to you guys here. We have a nice little group of QBs here. If you take a look at ownerships, they are so evenly spread out that you almost can pick whoever you want and go over on it. Now, one of the tournament things that we talk about all the time in trying to win a tournament is maybe just pick a couple of these guys and go bonkers on them. And if you're right, take down a tournament, right? So I'm going to go to both of you guys and say, you have 150 lineups to build. You have to pick two. I'm not going to afford, not one, we'll go two. You have to pick two quarterbacks this week to play in tournaments. You're going to go 75 with one, 75 with the other, for all the monies, right? So, BobbyWow, I'm going to start with you. You're forced to pick two. Give me your two and give me your reasoning for it.
I think number one for me is Jared Goff. I think it's a combination of game flow, what we're expecting, the offense, the price for him. I think he's got so many solid stacking options that are affordable. I just think there's so many boxes that Goff checks. And so Goff's my number one. I'd probably say I'm going 100 lineups Goff. And then if I got to pick another guy, I'm going 50 lineups with Josh Allen. He just looks too good on the ground. He's playing with that Baker swag that we talked about. He's getting it done to different wide receivers. And again, the legs are what matters with him. He's using his legs like crazy. And so I just think, ride that momentum with Allen. They're back at home. He's the second most intriguing to me. Lamar's right there as well, but Lamar in the playoffs, I'm not convinced yet. So I think to me, Allen edges out him. He's my second choice.
All right. I like it. I like both choices. I think Goff is a ballsier choice with, that's ballsy because that can go a lot of ways, but that's how you win the tournament. Burns, you're forced to pick two.
I would definitely pick Goff as one of the two. I'll split them 75-75, but Goff is one of them. I mean, everything in Detroit is all about, let's keep moving on in the playoffs. Dan Campbell's got this team on point. They are this team is, it's almost like they were meant to be here. I really like what Detroit's doing this year, from Dan Campbell all the way up through the organization. This is how they even did their draft this year, Jahmyr Gibbs. And then they got guys in the draft that everybody was like, what? Why are you drafting this guy here? But they went with their guys. And these guys are producing, right? So Jared Goff is my one guy. And then I'll go a little bit off of Josh Allen, though I really love Josh Allen this week. I'll go Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has yet to get it done in the playoffs. He has to get it done if Baltimore is going to move. If they're going to move anywhere into the playoffs, I really like Lamar Jackson to actually do it with his legs this weekend, and as well through the air to Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely now that Andrews is out. I think where they get all their rushing is through Lamar Jackson, and then they get in and around the goal line. He can do it on the goal line, or they go to one of the big backs, like Gus Edwards or even Dalvin Cook could actually get across in this game.
Dalvin.
Yeah, I mean, it could happen. I don't know. It's Dalvin Cook, right?
The best thing for Lamar is if the Texans rush defense holds up and really does stop the run, and so it just kind of forces those scores to come somehow or another off of that arm of Lamar for sure.
But what I really like about Lamar is that Houston is on the road. They're outdoors. Where they've done really well is indoors. And this is a different environment for them. They have not yet been in an environment on the road in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. I love CJ Stroud. But I think CJ Stroud his projection is spot on here, like being the last point per dollar projection on the board here. I think he should be your lowest owned quarterback on this entire slate, but I think Lamar is right there. He's second projected point per dollar, and I think that's right on.
Yeah. I'm gonna echo a couple of things that you said. Number one, last week on this show I said I'm fading CJ Stroud, right? They were on the road at Dallas. But the big reasoning for me in the fade wasn't so much, hey, this guy can get it done. He could, but I felt like if the Texans were putting up numbers, because the Cowboys were at home, they're in their stadium, they're the favorite, they're the favorite team, that they were probably answering. And so in that scenario, even if the one guy's doing good, the other guy's probably doing better. And I feel that way on this slate about CJ Stroud and Jordan Love. Both of those guys fall in this category where if Stroud is doing it against Baltimore is giving it back more. The only thing that ever really holds Lamar back is just his team having a good defense and just not needing to score. So they just kind of shut it down sometimes. And they're like, yeah, run it. Gus Edwards, Dalvin Cook, get in there. Right. But if they need to be scoring, that's the best case scenario for Lamar. So I don't need CJ Stroud because I can get all of his upside. And if he's crushing, Lamar's crushing more. I think the same thing with Jordan Love here. If Jordan Love is going off, then I would say that Brock Purdy is going offer.
That's the weird thing about the slate, though, is that I totally agree with the logic, but it's unique too, because when the Ravens are playing their game, when their offense is operating at the highest level, guys like Gus Edwards, Justice Hill they're scoring touchdowns. They're running the ball at the goal line. They're smashing the ball into the end zone. And I think, similar with the 49ers with McCaffrey, you see Debo get handoffs. That's the concern for me with these games. Like Lamar has been vultured already a bunch this season by running backs. Gus Edwards gets one in. Dalvin Cook finds a way to take one in. Yeah. I mean, that could happen. And I think those are scenarios we have to consider too.
I thought that was a less likely scenario with Dallas and how unreliant on the running back position they've been. But yes, that definitely can happen. And I just want to say, and this had nothing to do with what you just said, as you were speaking, a little thumb thingy popped up at like a thumbs up thingy popped up over your face. Did you see that, Burns?
I saw it, yeah.
What the hell was that?
I don't know. Somebody must have hit that thumbs up emoji icon.
That was crazy. I have
on
never
my screen.
You were speaking and like little thumbs up were popping up on your face there, and I'm like, is there something going on the YouTubes that that you can do that? How do they do that? That was cool. Sorry, but yeah, other people. I was like, where did that come from? And how come a thumbs up never happens when I'm speaking?
I also think Lamar. I think Baltimore will keep the foot on the gas in this one, no matter what the score is, because they have to win this game. They are a team that has gotten here before and they just didn't produce. And for them, they have to produce this week.
Yeah, no, I can see that. They don't want to be one and done. Harbaugh
wants to match his brother. It's already in the, it's kind of been shown all over Facebook and everything. He's like, yeah, my brother did it in the Natty. Now I got to do it. So, types of things.
That is real. I want to address a question that did come in from the live watchers. But as you guys are watching this, we want to hear from you. Like, who are your two? If you're forced to pick two quarterbacks, because we do strongly believe that the best way to attack giant tournaments, the smaller the tournament, the better. You need to take a stand, and taking a stand at QB really does set you up in a nice position. I want to address this legacy +2 concept. And legacy +2, what Jay is asking here is, should we force a stack of two players with our quarterback? Meaning, if I play Baker Mayfield, should I lock in the fact that two of players that catch passes from him will be in that lineup, or vice versa with any of these other QBs? And my thought is no, simply because that I watched it in the last few weeks. That has not been in the shorter slates. That is not a lock button thing that you always need to do. We have at least two quarterbacks on the slate that run a ton. And then we have two other quarterbacks in Brock Purdy, I would say, and probably Baker Mayfield, that have running backs that catch a lot of passes. So those combinations to me tell me, I don't, Bobby, while you're nodding your head, you're not a big force a lot of rules guy.
I'm not. I do think there's quarterbacks where I will do both. I'll have lineups where I force two and lineups where I force only one, like Jared Goff, for example. But I fully agree. This is not the time to make rules where you force two.
And by the way, one of the beautiful things about the sim boost is that it will cause some natural +2 and even +3 situations, but not all. So I prefer using the sim boost, maybe do a 5 to 7% boost. Sim boost is designed to simulate an actual game. And so you will get a little bit more of those combinations. And for me, like I said, I think I like your choices of QBs. I think Allen has to be in your mix. Allen has that 30+ point upside every single week. I don't care who the slate is or what, and they don't even need to play to the over for him to get there. I like that you guys chose Goff for that second spot. If I had to be a little more chalky about it, it would probably be Lamar, but I would want to get maybe one of these cheaper guys in there as well. And I can't really justify Baker. So I don't know if I could run 75 with him.
One other intriguing strategy for deeper tournaments, just to throw out there, is to get one guy that you feel really comfortable with, like a Lamar, like a Josh Allen, and then throw the other half, mix it between the two lower owned guys like Jordan Love and CJ Stroud. I think that's a viable strategy too, because it's the playoffs. Yeah, it's tough matchups, but what we saw from Green Bay last week is sitting in the back of my head. It's haunting me. So got to at least mention that.
Again, that was the Cowboys. I still feel like it was the Cowboys just being terrible.
Maybe.
Choking.
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
They've been slowly getting worse and worse over the course of the season. We should have saw it. And yeah,
I hope you're right. You're right about that.
Who knows? All right, let's shift gears to the running back position. And to me, this entire slate is about running back. It's so important, so critical. But right off the bat, I mean, when you're making a lineup this week, your first decision is this a McCaffrey lineup or is it not a McCaffrey lineup? Christian McCaffrey is such a better play than everybody else on this entire slate, including the wide receivers, that the only thing real, it's just like anybody could be a disappointment. Ownership could get crazy. There's always some benefit to fading ownership, but my goodness, this is as good of an on-paper spot for a running back as you might ever see. And he's an elite running back going up against a team that cannot stop the run, on a team that wants to run the football aggressively. He's priced down lower than he's been all season. But I mean, what would BobbyWow do? Is it just play the chalk and friend you?
I think so. I think on the 4-gamer you play the chalk. It's just too many things in Christian McCaffrey's favor. You don't have to go 100% on him necessarily. I think you can match the field. He'll probably be 60%, would be my guess, 65%.
I don't agree with the projection that I'm seeing on screen of 40%. I think you're much closer to correct, 69%.
But at the end of the day, Shanahan is going to do what he can to calm down Brock Purdy. And how do you calm down a guy like Brock Purdy and allow him to settle in? You feed Christian McCaffrey. That with the matchup, the usage is just, I think you play CMC.
I actually think the 49ers are going to blow out the Packers, which makes it even more CMC.
In any case, any scenario, it's hard to imagine CMC not getting there. And
I'll give you a bonus reason why. There's really no wide receiver on the slate that I think is lock button to, there's no Tyreek Hill competing here. There's no healthy Tyreek / healthy Justin Jefferson / none of those guys are on this slate, or even CeeDee Lamb. Like, we got Amon-Ra, but Amon-Ra is more of a great game gets you 30, where Christian McCaffrey's kind of like a bad game gets you 23.
Yeah.
And his upside is 40. Burns, feeling on the Christian McCaffrey sort of chalk.
I mean, I'll be eating it all day. I mean, I might even just lock button him in all 150. I don't care. At this point in the season, I was just like, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
If it is a blowout, I do think you need to have Elijah Mitchell into your player pool because they could potentially pull Christian McCaffrey out in the fourth quarter and just have Elijah Mitchell go the whole fourth quarter. But we're talking where they're up 35-3 or something like that.
That's too thin for me, Burns. That's too thin for me. I can't handle it.
I
I'll
get
do
it.
it. I'll do it on a showdown.
Yeah, I get it.
You want to
It's more
argue
of a
with me about
two-game slater.
I'll do it
I
on the
think it's more of
2-game.
a, yeah, I think it's more of a 2-game slater. And 4 games, don't even worry about him. Just lock
That's
in.
what I'm saying. It's too thin, and he's too expensive for that. Like, he's 5,200. He's already priced like a real starter, so like he would have to go bananas. And also that prediction that's a showdown / 2-game slate play, but good on those for sure.
But I mean, like, okay, we always talk about variables, right? And lowering the amount of variables that in your lineups. Well, if you just have Christian McCaffrey as one variable in all your lineups, you're already only having to deal with 8 different variables. So, and it just makes it that much easier. Running back is, compared to last week, this is kind of a thinner running back player pool. Isaiah Pacheco going on the road. I like him this week, but am I in love with him like I was last week? Maybe not. Detroit, Gibbs. I think Gibbs is a better play than Montgomery. Montgomery, I think, can get stopped by Tampa Bay. But I do like Gibbs pass catching out of the backfield. I'm not so sure about AJ this week, right? San Francisco's really tough defense. Devin Singletary on the road against a really good Baltimore defense. It's really tough. So you keep going down the list. I mean, Rashad White, he's going up against a really good Detroit rush defense. So outside of Christian McCaffrey, it's a really thin player pool for running back. And if you really have, I'm going to say, you have the balls to lock them in at 150, which I'm going to, I don't see why that's a problem.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think one of the names that could pop here. So my initial thought in looking at the running back position was, wow. First of all, if you just look at the DVPs, it's, hey, we're in the playoffs. Like, these teams are good. Like, we're in the divisional round of the play. Every team in here is kind of good, right? That's why they're in the second round of the playoffs. But the DVP is like, number 1 overall, number 2, number 3. Like, we're not talking about crappy teams. So everybody's got a bad matchup anyway. They all have a not such a great matchup. One of my first thoughts was like, man, I don't want to have to choose 3 of these guys. You lock in Christian McCaffrey, you take the 22, and then you pick a second guy and you be right about him, and then make the rest of your lineup without the rest of these guys. Because, even if Singletary gets it done, like, are we really expecting Singletary to go off for 28 against Baltimore on the road? Man, that's asking a lot. Gibbs could get it done. He's got that GPP upside. Pacheco is my second favorite. Pacheco that game's close. It's cold outside.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think my second running backs, if I had to pick one right off the bat, it would be Pacheco or James Cook. I really like that game for the running backs. Extremely cold game. It could be snowing. I mean, it's snowing here in Columbus, Ohio area. Could be snowing up there in Buffalo again. So, those are the kind of dynamics that makes a running back that much more valuable.
Yeah. And there's other, I am interested in Hill, but like, there's other reasons. There's other reasons here to be interested in some of these guys. Like Singletary, technically, it's a better matchup for running backs against Baltimore than it is for wide receivers. Like, it's better to run against that team, weirdly, than it has been to pass. So Singletary's got a decent matchup, I would say, but I don't like a heavy road underdog running back. That is not the normal style of running back that I like to play. I think Rashad White gets enough work in general that he can power his way to a 16, even in a bad game. BobbyWow, what are you thinking here for the second RB? I think we all agree that there's even a really, I think it's actually a sharp play. Like Burns said, just lock button Christian McCaffrey, get that variable out of there. So now we're only going to pick the second guy. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, the more you guys talk about it, the more that makes sense to me too. I think that's a good call. I think Devin Singletary probably goes a little bit. I think he was overlooked here just because he's a guy that won't get phased out. That's the beauty of Singletary, right? Even if the Ravens get out to a 28-0 lead, 21-3, 28-3, Singletary is going to get he's going to get targets. And I think that's important to note. So I don't know that we have that certainty with guys like Gibbs and Montgomery with the timeshare. Baltimore obviously is ugly. So I just feel like in terms of volume alone, Singletary is one of those guys, Pacheco as well. Those and Rachaad White, those will be the three guys I mix in. But don't sleep on Singletary.
Yeah, and then again, to take us back to before, Jahmyr Gibbs has that tournament winning upside. I think Jahmyr Gibbs probably has a higher ceiling than any of these guys. Jahmyr Gibbs wouldn't shock me if he got 30 fantasy points. I would say every other name that we just mentioned would shock the shit out of me. I would be like, what? How did they get to 30? Where Jahmyr Gibbs can kind of get there. One last name, I think a lot of people talking about Gus Edwards, Gus Bus in the. I don't know about Gus. He needs the 2 touchdowns just to kind of be reasonable value because he just won't get that amount of volume. And now with Dalvin Cook in there just fucking around, we might just find out. Find out.
There you go. And Justice Hill, for what it's worth, has looked decent too. So it's not like Edwards has a stronghold on the job necessarily.
Yeah, and that's right. And Justice Hill actually popped for me a little bit. He gets some targets. If the rest of these guys all stink it up and Justice Hill just kind of pulls off a 14 just based off of some passing game work and sneaks his way into the end zone once, man, that's the nuts. Justice Hill has a path. Although, again, the Dalvin Cook thing kind of muddies it a little bit in terms of not knowing what anybody's going to do.
Would you guys rule out certain running backs with quarterbacks? Like, to me, I'm not playing Lamar with any Baltimore running back, and I'm not playing any David Montgomery with Jared Goff. I think just to start.
Absolutely.
100% agree.
Eliminate any since I won't be playing any Stroud, it doesn't really matter with the Singletary thing. I'm not going to play Stroud. I'm just going to stick probably with 3 or 4 QBs. But I don't mind playing Rachaad White with Baker. I don't really mind Gibbs and Goff. Certainly McCaffrey and we didn't talk. We actually didn't talk about Purdy. Purdy's in a great spot too, by the way. San Francisco's putting up 4 touchdowns in this game, maybe 5. How many will go to Purdy? If it's 3, it's for me. You know what I mean? But so that one's in there. And I mean, this question, Pacheco's a way better play than Jones in every format on every website. Doesn't matter.
If you're going to punt, if you want to get real silly, I don't hate taking a couple shots on CEH in MME 150 lineups.
That is getting silly though.
Guy got 8 touches last week. I don't know. He just feels like a guy that's going to score. We'll see. That's silly.
We had the mini max winner last week. Do not lock button Stroud again, man.
I mean,
hey, who am I to tell him not to do that? It took down a big tournament against 150,000 people. When you do that, you do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. Amon-Ra. So, all right, let's shift gear now. Talk about the wide receivers, and I found that you got a really good looking group. I'm sorted by ownership. Let me sort by salary here. You got a great looking group at the top. Every one of these guys to me is good. Is there anything that stands out? Like Mike Evans, sure. Deebo Samuel, yes. Amon-Ra, of course, right? Stephon Diggs, why not? Ayuk, okay. And Rashee Rice. To me, Ayuk is the least good of that group, and he's still very good. So in tournaments, how are you sort of sifting through this group up top? Is it 90% QB related? You can't really get too many of these guys in an individual lineup. So usually you'll have one connected to a quarterback, and then if you can reach another one. How are you getting this done in tournaments, Burns? Dealing with this group of studs from Rice up through Amon-Ra.
Well, because I am locking in Christian McCaffrey this week, it's going to have to filter through. I'm going to have a couple of plays that are under 4K. I mean, it's going to have Josh Reynolds in there. It's going to have some of these other guys. And that's where lineup construction is going to lead you to. And that's why I like some of the 6K salaried quarterbacks and their pass catchers. I'm more apt for Jared Goff this week to have a good week with Laporta. I like the salary combination with Laporta versus Amon-Ra. I think Amon-Ra becomes a little bit too restrictive with Goff, even though I like Amon-Ra considerable amount. I mean, he's really good receiver, and he's in a great matchup. I mean, he's even got the 100 rating. But yeah, I'm going to be cycling through these guys, and I'll be cycling through all of the lower salaried guys as well, because of the fact that I am lock buttoning in Christian McCaffrey, the highest salaried guy on the entire slate.
I like it. Amon-Ra. So to your argument, the only defense of it I can give is Amon-Ra, he does not tend to have the 40-point games. He does get a lot of volume, but getting into the end zone has been less frequent for him than maybe some of the other expensive wide receivers. He usually tends to be more of somebody I think of as a higher floor wide receiver or higher floor stud rather than a high ceiling stud. Like I would put in Mike Evans as a high ceiling stud. Like when he's getting there, like 3 touchdowns happen. I don't know that 3 touchdowns have ever happened for Sun God in a game, but Amon-Ra is much more likely to get to 20 than Mike Evans is on a week-to-week basis. BobbyWow, how do you see these elite wide receivers? Do you have a preference? Is it just, hey, if I'm playing Purdy, it's Ayuk or Samuel. If I'm playing Brock, or if I'm playing Baker, it's Evans. You know, are you kind of going like that? Do you have a preference? Anything up top here?
I'm not playing Purdy. He's one of the guys that I'm eliminating. And so, that in conjunction with this thought of locking McCaffrey, I think that makes the decision a little bit easier. I definitely don't want to have more than 2 of McCaffrey, Samuel, Ayuk in the same lineup. And honestly, I'd probably like to have maybe 1 at most in a lot of the lineups. So I think that lowers my exposure to guys like Samuel and Ayuk again in that McCaffrey locking scenario. So, but again, I think all these guys are in play. I think Amon-Ra, great floor, great ceiling. I'm gonna have a lot of Goff, so I have a lot of him. Mike Evans feels like maybe the weakest link of all of them. I think, like you said, he could have a huge game. He could pop off, but at the same time, he's a guy that could put up 10 points. So I mean, he's the most concerning.
If he drops the pass, it's 10. If he catches the pass, it's 26. Like it's 1 catch, 2 catches like that he sometimes drops those. I like the swag though of Baker Mayfield. So I do like Mike Evans as a good tournament play. I think these guys are all good. And I think that's really the lesson. So for me, like Stephon Diggs is probably somebody I'm only going to play with Josh Allen. I'll have enough Josh Allen that I don't really need to mix that exposure up all that much. Like, no, I'm only probably going to play him with Josh Allen. The rest of these guys, I think they're all one-off viable. Deebo Samuel could be played as a one-off. Like, why not? Especially if you faded McCaffrey in a lineup. My goodness. Like, I almost feel like if you don't have McCaffrey in a lineup, you almost have to have Deebo in that lineup. He runs one in. Brandon Ayuk can get it done. We never know when it's going to happen, but he gets it done. WR1 level. So everybody here is playable. And Rashee Rice, I don't love this side of the game per se. Like, the Mahomes. Mahomes is a guy I'm probably not using, by the way. So you would talk about like a quarterback I could fade for the same reasons that I think a lot of these guys, like if Mahomes is getting it done, I think Josh Allen's is answering bigger. And Mahomes just hasn't gotten it done all year. So for those reasons, maybe I'll have some, but like very low exposure to Mahomes. Like if I need to fade somebody, I was kind of thinking I could just, if Mahomes is going off, I think Josh Allen's going off more. So I don't think I'm losing that much.
He's the one guy that I would break the don't force 2 with. I think if you're playing Mahomes, you better be stacking with 2.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because the optimizer won't give you 2. Like it definitely won't give you 2 if you don't force it. Even a sim boost isn't going to get you there. Because those turds are just so poorly, they're so poorly projected.
If you're desperate to play Patty, run 10 out of 150 with him, stack with Rashi and Kelsey in all 10 lineups, and then move on. I think that's the only way he gets there, is with both those guys getting there too.
Or even, again, Justin Watson catches 1 for a touchdown, and it scores 17 at 3K, just like the Dak Gallup thing. It didn't take much. Or Mecole Hardman could also get it done. It would be a miracle. He's had a million opportunities. He's a dropper. He's a pass dropper. But, I don't understand how these guys get to the NFL and they can't catch a pass. All right, so let's move on now. We talked about the second section. Just quick thoughts on Godwin and Flowers. I like Flowers. I think he's fine play. Probably a 25% target share this week kind of guy. I think a lot of it's going to come down to how many throws does Lamar actually throw.
Yeah, I mean, no Mark Andrews, a great matchup for Flowers, and he's been scoring touchdowns recently too. Yeah, pointing up for Flowers.
Absolutely.
Any preference with the Green Bay crew, or just you want them at all? Can we fade them? You can't really fade them. They're in a really critical salary spot, I guess. But how do you deal with the Green Bay group?
You don't really gash the 49ers with big plays typically. And, Christian Watson hasn't been healthy as it is. He's my least favorite. I think Jaden Reed could be involved. My guess is if Shanahan's got to take one away from the Packers, it's Reed. So I think that leaves Dobbs is my favorite option. Again, very low ownership, same price as those guys. You got the upside. I think Dobbs is my favorite, but you probably got to mix them all in.
Burns, anything on that group? I need some clarity.
Oh man, Reed operates out of the slot. San Francisco's the number 1 defense against slot receivers in the NFL over the middle. He's a guy that I can basically X out of my player pool. I think if we're gonna go one of these guys, man, I don't know if Dobbs gets it done week in and week out twice in 2 weeks. I think it's Dontavian Wicks, man. I think he's the guy that nobody's even talking about. He did it in week 18. Really wasn't really much of the game. He got some targets in the game last week, but it just didn't produce like a huge fantasy production. I think he might be the guy this week.
I love that there's so much disagreement, and here in the chat, Wicks or Watson, like you guys just brought up the other two, and that's what makes for a beautiful weekend, even on a short slate. Like, I think what just happened with the Packers guys is correct in that I don't fucking know. You don't fucking know. There's 4 of them. They're all getting 55% snap counts. It could be Christian Watson getting it done, but that dude and his bum hammy, 2 years worth of it, enough is enough already, bro.
I'm confident the top scorer on the Green Bay Packers will be Aaron Jones. I don't know that it'll be close.
There it is. I don't know that do you like Aaron Jones though this week?
I'm interested in Aaron Jones.
Interesting. Okay.
I think he's a good candidate for a bunch of targets this week. He's looked better. I think AJ could surprise. But to me, again, he's higher priced, so it's not like we're getting a deal or anything. But I think he's the better option of all those guys by far.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough with those wide receivers. There's no doubt about it. But the area where we're probably going to have to live, and we'll find some much better matchups, and this is really where my preference is to kind of avoid all that mess. Studs and duds. Try to get 2 of the... My goal is McCaffrey, 2 studs, wide receivers, a 3K style guy, and kind of work it around that. And I might need to put a second 3K player in the flex to make it all work. Maybe double tight end or 2 4K like tight end types. So let's get to these turds. The cheap guys.
Kind of like where Bobby was going earlier in the show, 3K Dawson Knox, that comes into play.
Yeah, it works too. But certainly I think the best 3K guys are probably going to be found hopefully within this group down here. So I'm just gonna spit off some names. I'm gonna rattle off some names, right? When you get to this zone here, Rashad Bateman, Khalil Shakir, Josh Reynolds, Jameson Williams, maybe Mechie, and definitely Justin Watson. So of this cheap, I think all of these guys are pretty decent. The one who's projecting the best by far is Josh Reynolds. And when I say by far, I mean like he's a full point and a half projection above anybody, even in the whole area of his salary. He's projecting for 9, almost 10 fantasy points. I've got to go all the way up to, Jaden Reed here at 5,200 to get another guy with a similar projection, which I like on Jaden Reed as well.
But are you willing to die on the hill of a chalky Josh Reynolds?
No.
That's the question.
I mean, you can't. So how much Reynolds is acceptable? How much Reynolds is acceptable, Bobby? Wow.
Match the field. There's no reason to go nuts either way on him. I think you match the field. You get 20%, 25%, maybe 30%, Josh Reynolds, and then call it there. I don't think you have to pick an extreme here.
Burns, match the field?
Yeah, I don't think you have to go way over on Reynolds. I think just match the field.
Dude,
on all these 3K guys, right? You just match the field.
If Hardman got 8 to 10 targets, he would absolutely break the field, but I don't know that he's getting that many. I don't know that Hardman's getting 8 to 10. And there's some other names. So other names to mention here. Trey Palmer, right? Just okay. John Mechie looks like he's going to get the number 2 role, but that's a tough matchup at Baltimore. But I don't mind it for this kind of price for 3,400. Trent Sherfield didn't get anything done last week, but he was on the field quite a bit. I mean, who else besides Reynolds are you confident in here, guys? And of course, K-Shack, my guy.
K-Shack stands out the most. Yeah, I think with Davis out, he's going to continue benefiting in a big way. Sherfield's out there to block. He's more of a blocking wide receiver type of guy. I think K-Shack's the producer, so I'm not very interested in Sherfield. I think I'm going right back to K-Shack here.
Burns, what about you?
Yeah, I mean K-Shack, he might be the guy. I do like that he got the touchdown last week. I mean that's extremely viable. I don't know if Josh Reynolds can get it done. I mean he's got to get a touchdown in this game, right? You would think if he has to pay off his salary, right?
No, he got 30% of the targets last week. Like he could just get there on volume alone. Like I don't even think he needs it. If he gets 6 targets, 5 receptions, I'm happy.
But to beat the other ones, the other guys that are in the same salary range, he's either
one of them will get a touchdown.
Yeah. So if the one guy gets the touchdown and Reynolds only gets 4 catches, 30 yards, but the other guy has 3 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown, he's going to beat him out. That's why I say you just need to sit like these guys, keep them all at field weight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not buying the Jameson ownership there. I think he's a great pivot off of Reynolds. He can get it done on one play. He hasn't gotten it done. If he's going to be 20%, no way. But I can't buy that for a second. I think he's the pivot. One of those guys is going to put up 10 points in this game, Jameson or Josh.
If they were actually going to be the same ownership, I would definitely be leaning heavily towards Josh Reynolds.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you, Bobby. I don't think they will be. Although I think people have been irrationally too high on Jameson Williams pretty much all season. Like, why does he never get 5 targets? Like, let's level up the targets for Jameson. Like, we keep hoping. We know who he is. We know where he was drafted. This is a first-round draft pick. Like, he was drafted. I think he was drafted in the real NFL in the first round.
He's legit. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, John Mechie, people don't realize he was a second-round draft pick. Like, he has some draft capital behind him. Had an illness, had to stay out of football for a year to deal with like a cancer of some sort.
Yep.
So, he was also a guy with some high hopes. They drafted him in the second round knowing he had that illness. So pretty impressive, but I'd like to see it translate into success on the field. Any other cheap wide receivers in this zone that you're interested in at all. BobbyWow, give me one. Burns, give me one, or none if there's no one.
I think that covers it. Mecole Hardman, we talked about as potentially big ceiling guy, but I think that covers. This could be a lot of K-Shack, one of Reynolds, and Jameson Williams, and then maybe throw in some Mechie as well. But I think those 4 guys for me are the primary.
Burns, anything different, or we'll jump to tight end?
I don't think anybody different. I maybe just add in Odell Beckham into the mix. I know he's more than these guys by about $1,000, but he needs to be a part of the mix as well.
Oh man, it would not shock me if just randomly playoff Odell showed up. Remember how good he was in the playoffs 2 years ago? I don't remember what team he was on. Was it which team was he on?
LA Rams.
He was on the Rams. Yeah, and he looked so good. Like he just was great in the playoffs. And then he, the ACL tear was that in the Super Bowl, I feel like. So he was great. Great for their run. Let's see if he's got one more run in him. Yeah. The chat agrees. They like Odell in the playoffs. Playoff Odell. It's good Odell. Tight end. We've already kind of glossed over the tight ends a little bit, but we can kind of get a little more in depth. Some of these tight ends are going to be tied exclusively to their quarterback for me, and other ones I think are playable standalone. How do you feel about that in general? Like, can I play Kittle outside of a Purdy lineup? Is it something you should be doing? Similar for Kelsey and Laporta. Like, do I really want to fucks with them? Like, do I want to mess with Kelsey and not Mahomes in the same lineup? Is that worth doing, BobbyWow?
I think it is. I hate to say it. Typically on a main slate, I would not go that route because it's a smaller slate and these guys are not priced up like we typically see. I mean, Kelsey on a main slate is, he's like 7,500, 8K.
This price is bonkers for Kelsey at 6K.
And so for that reason, I think, no, do not tie them to quarterbacks alone. Either you could run standalone Kelsey, you could run standalone Laporta. These guys to me could pop off without their quarterback necessarily being the optimal QB. So no, I'm not tied to any QB with these guys.
I feel like when I'm looking at these tight ends, you have to just, instead of thinking about them as a tight end, you have to just think about them relative to who else is available at those price points. And
100%.
This entire slate, I think the tight ends are better than what's available that aren't a tight end. Like this is Burns. This slate is screaming double tight end to me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be in and around about 50% tight end in the flex.
Yeah.
On the 4-game slate. There are just guys that are in the salary range that we typically like to gravitate towards on the main slates of DraftKings, where these guys are, they're 6K, 5,900, 5,500. We love that range normally on a main slate to get all of our production out of our wide receivers, especially if we're looking to go upwards in salary at the running back position for Christian McCaffrey. We got to relieve salary somewhere. And if we're doing it with 3K wide receivers and we have to have like 2 in our lineups, that gets a little tricky because, is 2 guys at 3K going to produce a huge fantasy score a lot more than if you have 2 tight ends. One is like 4K who could get, 6 targets in the game. And then pair him with like a 5K guy who could get 7 targets in the game, and both of them potentially could score a touchdown. Those are the kind of things you have to weigh out when you are building lineups this weekend. But yeah, I mean, I love the tight ends this week, and this is a great tight end player pool. I love all of the favorite tight ends, and then a couple of underdogs. The underdogs being, Travis Kelce, and then. What was the other one? I'll have to look. But Tampa Bay, K-Dotton.
Yeah.
So
what do we feel about the combination of Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft? I want to actually now go and check this here, but any interest in those guys? It's kind of weird to know. Let's see what happened last week. Hold on. Tucker Kraft got the role. 80% of the snaps, even though they had equal target numbers. So I don't know what to make of that. How do you guys feel about this combo of tight ends? Or, hey, they're up against San Francisco So who needs them anyway?
I don't think you need to get cute with those guys. I think to me, Kelsey, Laporta are smash plays. Isaiah Likely is going to be the most overlooked play on the slate. Andrews is ruled out. I think Isaiah Likely outscores every Baltimore receiver. I think he's the safest play of all the Baltimore pass catchers. So to me, at 4,700, Isaiah Likely is the secret sauce here. I think you lock him up with Kate Otten and cash almost, and you move on. But I love Likely. I love those top guys at 6K, 5,900. Those salaries are crazy to me. And I'll be all over that. Don't get cute.
Don't get cute at tight end, guys.
Double tight end, but don't get cute.
Unless it's Kate Otten, then we can get a little cute with him.
I don't think that's getting cute. I think, he's one of the guys, one of the cores.
Do we have to have a discussion about the succubus, or we'll leave that for another?
Oh God,
another day. I agree. I think all of these guys, and listen, it's ballsy to go that heavy on Likely. I mean, there's some other names here that are, like Dalton Kincaid is I rather play Dalton. Like, I love Dalton Kincaid on this slate. I think that guy has been heavily involved. So like I said, it's just another guy. And then when you add Kittle to the mix, it's 5,200. I'm just looking at the numbers, between 46 and 5,200. Again, I'm rolling the dice on Packers 50% snap count wide receivers at San Francisco versus tight ends at home in home games that are touchdown guys that are red zone targets for their teams. So I think all of the tight ends, Likely, Kittle, Kincaid, even Schultz a little bit, but not as much. But down to Kate Otten and all the way up through Laporta and Kelsey are like more likely to score a touchdown than most of the wide receivers at similar prices, and have more target potential and likelihood than all of the wide receivers at the same price. That combination tells me, let's get some double tight end action going, boys. That's what I'm feeling here.
I wish I could play 3. Yeah, this is a double tight end weekend again.
Yeah, and we've been right about the double tight ends when we've talked about them. Like, that's one area where it's been pretty spot on in terms of prediction to it actually occurring throughout the season. So that's one that I think will also not be something that you're going to hear like elsewhere. Maybe, I don't know. I don't go elsewhere. But
so what are you guys in the flex position percentage wise? Are you looking at like 30% running back, 50 whatever percent, 60% tight end, and then fill it in with wide receiver?
I mean, you just got 100% out there. So it's too much, but yeah, I would say I'm going to limit it maybe even to 20% running back. I do not like 3 running backs today. I think it's acceptable. I don't want to fully get against, because I do see 2 or 3 other, like I said, if you're having Christian McCaffrey, I could see 2 of these guys. James Cook could pop, Jahmyr Gibbs, Isaiah Pacheco. They're fine. So maybe I'd go 30% there. Maybe I'll limit tight end to 40%. Or 50%, maybe 35% running back. And then, it'll mix in tight end and we don't force them in. We're just limiting a max in those boxes. So I want to allow it to do its thing. But I think the tight ends are going to project better. They will show up in your flex if you don't stop it.
I'm 80-20-0, 80% tight ends, 20% wide receiver, 0 running back in the flex.
Balls, dude. I love it.
Love
Bobby
it.
wins tournaments. So when Bobby tells you that's what he's doing and he's taking a strong stand on the thing, just understand this is a multi-time Millie Maker winner. Sorry, I know you will never say it, but that approach is how you win. So
I think we just gotta. It's easy to get off track on a slate like this and try to overanalyze. When you're getting Travis Kelce for the same price as Gus Edwards, take Travis Kelce. Take what the slate gives you. Okay, this is crazy.
The fact that that was such a good analogy. What you just said with Gus Edwards, like if you play season-long fantasy football, right, and you have a choice on your bench, and this is effectively what this choice is. You are looking at Travis Kelce and Gus Edwards, and you're like, who am I going to play? Like, when are you choosing Gus? Never. Doesn't mean Kelce will always outscore him, but you will never make the choice. No, I'm just going to play Gus at the same, in my flex because fuck it. You would never make that choice ever. Everybody's like, holy shit, you just fucking blew my mind open.
Now watch Gus be the flex top scorer. But in all seriousness, though, like sometimes the slate slaps you in the head with something obvious, and you want to not take it. But this is the slate to take the obvious play. I think double tight end's the move.
100%.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going too. I mean, I was going to go up as high as 70%, but the 80% makes a lot of sense.
It's balls. I like it. I like it too. But a lot of times we really just want to get into this, like on the shorter slate, and this is going to be more dramatic on the 2-game slates, by the way, guys. So like when you're looking, I think FanDuel broke it into 2 gamers, not really a 4-gamer. I love it. I'm going to be fucking working tonight through tomorrow until about 4:30. I'm traveling on Sunday, so I won't be able to do anything on Sunday. So I got to get it all done. But the 2 gamers, but it's even more dramatic in our back testing for the last few years. And I've gone through a ton of 2 and 3 and 4 game slates. The incident of 2 tight ends being the correct combination is much higher than the amount of double tight end that people actually play. Like people will play like 17% and it wins like 30% of the time just on average. Like it is one of the very few leverage spots that you can get on short slates. All right. Last position group. And by the way, I just want to actually say here, welcome to the stream. Welcome to the channel. Like, subscribe. And then we will see you in DFS Army next year. But if you wanted to get into DFS Army and the VIP and all that stuff earlier, promo code playoffs, we are still rolling it 24% off your VIP subscription. Effectively, if you've looked at other sites that have an optimizer, that have projections, that have what we have, it's gonna run you $150, $200 a month. You get 24% off our VIP. I don't even know how to do that math, but it's something, $79.99, 24% off, 816, 20. That's 15. Actually, I do know how to do the math. I forgot. Yeah, that's $59.99. That's not too bad. You can't get that anywhere for a full VIP Discord and everything that we have, and not to mention, of course, the props subscription, which is up $2,000 this week, and $14,000 if you joined us in September, just following along with the prize picks and sleeper plays. Guys, let's talk defense. Now, you have some obvious spots. The Ravens, the 49ers, maybe the Lions, maybe the Bills. Burns, what does the Shark Lab say in terms of defense? I don't love paying up for defenses, but Stroud hasn't thrown an interception in like 3 months. So, paying up for the Ravens seems a little rough. The 49ers, yeah, right? Want some of that. But Love has been really good too, not throwing interceptions, not turn it over, could change at any time. What does the Shark Lab say here?
Honestly, I'm sticking with favorites this week. I think Stroud coming into Baltimore is going to be a different environment than he's dealt with in the past. Going back to week 1, right? This Houston team is an extremely different team than week 1, granted. But Baltimore beat them 25-9 in week 1. Baltimore, I really think I'll have a lot of ownership in Buffalo Bills defense this week. I think it's a very good defense. It showcased last week. They were stifling last week. It's going to be a cold game again. It's just a nasty environment up there in Buffalo. Kansas City has never been on the road in the playoffs. I just like the narrative around it, but a really sneaky defense is going to be the Detroit Lions, because of the fact that Baker Mayfield has been interception happy in the past. And we're talking about the second round of the playoffs here, and Detroit wants to win and they're going to go all out to win. And I really like Detroit as the real sneaky defense this week. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to X out any of the defenses because it just makes things happen. Like, you get a 5 out of Green Bay and that's just enough, right? Or 5 out of Tampa Bay, and that's just enough because they're the lowest price defense. So I won't X anybody out of the player pool, but, I'm going to be stronger or heavier on certain defenses because of, just narratives in general. I really like Dan Campbell and what they're doing there in Detroit.
BobbyWow, any defenses popping for you?
Not really. No, I think, if we learned anything last week, again, don't overthink it on defense. Like there's no obvious choice on defense. So this is the spot where you can get away with a defense putting up 5 points.
Yeah.
And it can happen with the other team putting up a bunch of points too. So, I wouldn't X any out. I'm not going nuts and taking a stand here.
Yeah. So the strategic way to apply what you're saying is this, right? There is a scenario where a slate like this plays out and none of these defenses get a double-digit score. None of them. Now, it's not for sure. Anything can happen. But in that scenario, simply paying down for one of the cheaper ones will wind up being the based move. Again, don't know what it means. But I don't know what it means.
Here it goes again.
But it's going to be the based move, right? If the two that stand out to me in terms of like not the 49, to me it's obvious. Like the Ravens and 49ers are really good defensive teams and they should smash. And I agree with you, Burns. Lions, great. They're at home in the dome. They've dominated teams before. We don't know how good the Bucs really are. Again, they beat the shit out of an Eagles team that was like in absolute spiral collapse. So I don't know. I think we overestimate the Bucs right now based on having seen that win. So they might be terrible and they might be dominated by the Lions and fine. The two that kind of pop for me is like, hey, I don't mind either one of these in my lineup or Bills and Chiefs. Both of the quarterbacks, both of the teams have been weirdly turnover prone this season. Can you not see Mahomes out there just frustrated when MVS lets one go through his hands? Interception happens. And then like 10 seconds later, he's throwing one to Mecole Hardman. He's like, whoops. And another thing happens. And you're like, what is going on with this poor guy? No one can catch a pass. So like that could totally happen. And it leads to turnovers. And then, of course, we saw last week, I wanted to full fade the Packers and they wind up being the nuts defense at the very, very cheap level. So outside, if I had to make an argument for these guys, the bottom two, it's like they're cheap.
And it's no different it's not earth shattering, but like build your lineup and, take whatever defense is left at the end. Some weeks, I think that's pretty much a strategy every week. Some weeks I'm willing to go back and tinker and say, oh, if I could get up to, the Ravens from here, maybe I'll do it. This week, just take whatever you have at the end defense wise and don't overthink it. That's
but it probably will be the 49ers. If I had to guess which one scores the most points, I'm going to guess the 49ers.
Yeah.
Pure guess.
Yeah.
Salaries aren't that far apart either. So that's the other part of it. It's just $1,000 difference between the top and the bottom.
Yeah, it'd be a pure guess anyway. Guys, that's going to do it for Tournament Tactics. We got the big slate coming up. We're excited. Another weekend. This is a great weekend for football because it's not just the 4-game slate. It's not just 2-game slates, but we also have showdowns, 4 showdowns really, which are all broken down. We have sheets out for all of them. There are is there a featured showdown on a thing like this? Like the later one, I guess?
I think the late night on both nights is, but there's some good contests in all 4.
Yeah. So if you're a showdown person, the Dom Station locked and loaded for those showdowns. It's a great way to attack and try to take down some contests. Remember what we do in showdowns is if you're going to do 20 max, which we love, just pick one, pick a captain, sack it up.
And I don't know if it'll be the same. Did you see last weekend, because of the playoff slates, how they were drawn up, there was so much overlay for all the showdown games, like massive overlay. So take advantage of that if it happens again.
Yeah. No, I saw it. And it was like, I saw one was 150,000 entries and minutes before lock. I was like, it was at 110. I was like, whoa, wait a second. What the hell's going on here? Because it's hard to focus on showdowns when you've got 3-game slates and 4 games. Last week was absolutely bananas. Honestly, I needed like a 2-day rest after last weekend and all of that action, like 3 days in a row. And it was crazy. That was a lot of football goodness, man. It was crazy. So hopefully let us all hope for more overlay this weekend. Don't forget to play on Fanduel. FanDuel has really good contest structures. And, like if you like playing nickel games and dimes and quarter games and not spending too much money, FanDuel is really good for that. Don't forget to allow players versus defense. Don't allow your defense to dictate the other players in the lineup. Do not worry about it. BobbyWow, are the Bears trading Fields?
I sure hope not. I think they will.
You think it's going to happen?
I think they will. Yeah.
Wow. I thought
can't believe it.
I hope not. I really hope I'm wrong, but I think it's going to happen.
We'll see. I think
it's
either way, it's really the Bears are set up for a really good future. So I'd be excited to be a Bears fan right now. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Hit that like button if you don't mind. Let us know that you're out there. We're not getting enough subscribes during the show. I guess it's because the same crew watching every week. But we got 7,000 views last week and 30 subscribes. Like, what are you guys doing?
Maybe because they don't get to hear about members' wins. But Brian Sparto won $20K last weekend. Boom.
Brian's here in the chat. $20K winner from last weekend. Not just him though. We had the Grimes took down the Minimax at 6K, and he beat out 142,000. Really impressive. And we had 3 or 4 members handcraft winners in various GPPs that were more three max style. So lots and lots of wins last weekend. A lot of good stuff. We taught, we hit it. We hit on some spots. We always going to miss on some spots too. That's just, if we knew them all, we wouldn't have to do a video. We wouldn't have to do this. We'd just be printing cash. So good luck this weekend, everybody. Don't forget. Yeah, that's right. NASCAR is on the way. Best sport for DFS. That's not football, in my opinion. Love NASCAR. MMA is about to kick up as well. So we got a lot going on at DFS Army. Golf season just starting up. Taco's the best. Promo code playoffs gets you 24% off. We got the free month package as well.
Josh crushes that PGA.
Oh, love it. Love it. And there's the 20K winner. Fucking loaded. Love it. Good luck this weekend, everybody. We'll see you in the chat.